You're listening to the Real Estate Runway podcast, powered by Quattro Capital, where we are all about alternative business and investment strategies to help you amplify life and maximize wealth. Here's your host, the recovering engineer turned multifamily investor, Chad Sutton.
All right, Real Estate Runway friends, today we have a dear friend of mine, Mr. Jake Havron. We're going to talk a little bit today about the strategic edge and influence and why you need it in your life. Jake is a good friend of mine that I met at a nonprofit organization called 180 Elevate. He was a speaker, next to Dave Asprey and several other big names there. So give him a Google if you haven't already. The guy's everywhere. He's done a lot of great things, but let's get him on the air today and talk about how he can help your business and your personal growth, as well as we're just going to talk a few tactical items that you can use to develop and increase your influence in whatever network you're in. So without further ado, let's get after it. Here we go. All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Runway podcast. As always, I'm your host, Chad Sutton, and we are powered by Quattro Capital here at the Real Estate Runway. So today I have a special friend of mine, Mr. Jake Havron. Jake and I met. Ironically, we were at an event for a nonprofit organization that a couple of my investors run called 180 Elevate out in San Francisco. It was their inaugural launch event. And I see this good-looking guy over in the corner, attracting people everywhere. And I'm like, I got to go talk to this dude. He's got something about him. And Jake is all about gaining the strategic edge and better influencing in your network. So, Jake and I actually had the benefit with his lovely significant other of spending some time out in Sonoma Valley, getting to know each other over a little bit of wine and Napa as well. So, Jake, welcome to the show. How are you doing today, brother?
I'm doing fantastic, my friend. Excited to be here. And, all I can say is that I think we're here on this very moment because of being able to bring the strategic edge and bring a little bit of influence in our own friendship and partnership. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree, my friend. And you know what's crazy? You guys would not believe some of the tech difficulties and scheduling difficulties he and I had to get this show recorded and bring it to you. So this has not been without struggle, but we are here. We are doing it, baby. Let's go. So to get going on the show, man, tell me your story a little bit. I want to introduce you to the Real Estate Runway audience because your story is just incredible of how you went from where you were as a child to what you're doing today. So let's let that one rip.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the tech thing too, right? Everyone sees the glory, but they don't know the story behind the scenes. They don't know us restarting our computers and all that. But hey, we're here to bring a lot of value. And my story just started off. I actually grew up in Maui, Hawaii, right? So if you want to talk about just a little bit of a different lifestyle, I grew up there, and I got a full scholarship to play basketball and get a nursing degree. So I actually wanted to be in exercise science because I loved sports. I was planning to be a professional basketball player. That's every man's dream, especially when you're playing basketball growing up. And so I went and became a nurse because I heard that was the better paying job. And from there, it was my senior year of college, wrapping up 4-year degree. I was in the ER helping people, saving lives. That's all I knew at the time. I wasn't personally developed. I wasn't listening to podcasts or episodes or anything like that. None of this, Real Estate Runway. But I knew how to help people. And there was this guy that came in with a life-threatening heart attack, and he was in a coma, and they came busting through the doors on the stretcher. And, as a nurse, you go and save his life. And so gave him the right prescriptions, the right medication, did the right procedures to help him bring him back to life. And, all I was witnessing at that time, Chad, was his family seeing their dad and their husband, almost dead. And it was preventable. It was a lot of lifestyle stuff. So I helped him. He got out of there, and I felt so good. I was like, awesome. That was like one of the first lives I truly, truly saved. And what set me on this path today, Chad, and what I really want to express is this person came back in a couple months later with another heart attack. And when they came into the ER, and it didn't take me too long to recognize, but when I recognized it was the same person, what happened is it kind of just tore my soul apart a little, even though I didn't know what that felt back then or what that was. But that's what set me on a path. Is like, I don't know if nursing's my right vehicle, and I say it's like, you could be Lance Armstrong, one of the greatest athletes in the world, but if you're riding a tricycle, you're going to get beat by average athletes that are on an Olympic bike, right? Because they have the better vehicle. And I was just on the wrong vehicle. And that's where, 5 years later, I went through personal training, online training, transitioned into being a business consultant for these entrepreneurs all over the world. And here we are today, where you saw me speaking next to Dave Asprey and the CEO of Zoom and all that. And it all happened because I just wanted more in my life.
That is an incredible story, and I can't imagine how that hits home. Having seen that repetitive cycle that some people get themselves in. But yes, and if you guys have not seen Mr. Jake Havron speak publicly, he's all over the internet. So just Google his name. You're going to see him at Tony Robbins conferences. You're going to see him at probably 180 Elevate. I'm sure it was recorded, but the guy is just a phenomenal speaker. So we'll put that to the side and let you guys go explore Jake there. So thanks for sharing that story. But what I really want to get into today is, what it is that your program entails. What is the strategic edge? And let's talk about influence a little bit and how individuals can improve their influence in their network and in their daily lives. So maybe let's start with the strategic edge. What is it? Why does it matter? Why do I care?
Yeah. Well, it's such a great question. And, and behind the scenes, besides all the technical stuff, I always ask people, like, especially you, I ask, who's listening right now? Who am I talking to right now? So I can really understand. And you're like, they're entrepreneurs or investors. They're, maybe still in the corporate, but they want more. They want to obviously learn their real estate runway so they can live this, financial freedom in that sense. And I was like, okay, good. I was like, this works, because if someone is living and walking and they have breath in their lungs, what we teach about influence is important to them. And because it's like the foundation of the empire you build. If you really think about it, and if you're one of these people that we're talking about right now, if you can look back at when your life changed, whether it was a marriage that you're now in, whether it was your kids going off to college or maybe even high school and they're doing really well, or maybe it's that business you started and now very successful, or the investments that you started. If you really, really think about why that was a success, it was because of influence, because you were able to influence the person, the company, the partner, whatever it is, to be part of this mission. But if you also think about a situation that didn't go right, the common denominator as well is influence. You weren't able to influence that right. And now your kid is doing things the opposite of what you're telling them. Now that business that should have been a success is a failure because you weren't able to influence your customers to, understand what the product is. And so when I really understand that this is like the common foundation of this, I just wanted to dive deep on this, Chad. And I've been studying the greats like Tony Robbins and Chris Voss, who's the FBI negotiator. And
I love that guy, dude.
he's incredible. And even like Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort, he has a great sales strategies, and all these other people that you put it all together and realize that when you can optimize your influence in sales, you can move not just faster through this world, because the most influential people are the ones that move the fastest, Chad, but they're also the ones that bring the world with them the quickest. Because if they can influence the world to come with them and they have good values and integrity, there's a lot of unimaginable things you could do by having influence. So that's where I was like on this lifelong pursuit, and I will always be on this pursuit on how do I help others. Hopefully, we'll get very tactical here in a second, because I love getting tactics. I just don't want to talk theory, but how do you become more influential so when you go do that next business proposal or that next project proposal, or you're trying to do a roundup of investments, how do you speak to the emotional and logical needs of people, and also understand what's their dominant reasons of not buying and not wanting to buy? Because if you understand that, oh, business will be very, very fun going forward.
I can't agree more with some of the things you were saying there. And we're absolutely about to get tactical, folks. So get ready for it. But, two things in life and in business, really, you are in sales and marketing, whether you like it or not. And
Mhm.
so the core of any business, in my case, in many of the listeners' case, it is real estate. And our customers are, quite frankly, tenants, or they're investors. Sorry, we don't say tenant, we say residents. They are residents, or they are investors of the project, things of that sort. And, knowing your customer, knowing what they want, what it is that you can provide to them, how you can add value to them, is a big part of the equation. But then again, the other part of the equation that I think is often glossed over is influence, right? If you've ever seen someone, Jake, who just seems like they've got it all, they've got it together, things seem to go their way all the time, it's probably not because they're smarter than you, right? It's probably
Mhm.
because they have better influence than you do. And you
Correct.
just said something that is of utmost importance. Those who make it the farthest in this world take the world with them when they go. They're likable, they're trustworthy, and they're known. And all of that
Correct.
comes from influence.
And also, I got to say this too. And influence and sales. Now, sales, unfortunately, has a bad connotation because people learn these tools and strategies that I'm about to teach, and it's been around for decades. It's not like I'm the one that's created this, but they've learned, NLP techniques. They've learned better ways to close. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that just don't have good integrity and values, and they put a really bad reputation to this. However, these tools are absolutely neutral, right? It's how you use them, just like how money is neutral. If you're a bad person, you have more money. We know that you're just going to be more of a bad person. But when you learn these tools, you got to understand that this world is where it's at today because of people selling things. They're selling a vision, they're selling a mission, they're selling products. Our founding fathers had to literally sell people to get out of this tragedy and taxation without representation. They literally had to sell people to go across the world to a new land that no one knew about, and they sold them on this belief of this new empowering freedom. If you're in America, you know what I'm talking about, right? 1776. Like, that would have never happened if they didn't have influential skills. Now, did they learn the skills and tactics like how we're going to teach today? Probably not, but they had that inert ability because we all sometimes are naturally gifted at that. So I just wanted to make it very clear before we get about the tactical on this, is that there might be some limiting beliefs that come up of like, well, I feel like I'm manipulating if I'm doing this, or that comes off like sleazy or salesy. If that comes up when we talk about this, my challenge for you is to question that belief and say, why am I thinking that? Where did that come from? Was that because I had a business partner that would tell me that all the time, or my dad would do that because he was a car salesman and I saw how many people like kind of just looked at that differently? Challenge those beliefs, because what I'm about to share with you, and Chad, I'm so excited to be able to share this, can really, really take your business to the next level, let alone your family dynamic and your relationships with every single human moving onward.
We're going to let the mic drop moment on the intro be right there, and we're going to go get tactical right here, right now with Mr. Jake Havron. So, Jake, where do we begin?
Great question. So let's start off with the foundation. Let's just go right into influence, which is also getting the strategic edge, right? But influence, we got to understand two things. Humans have two pulling forces. They have the pulling force of pleasure or the away force of pain. Okay. It really comes down to that in the actual humans of that. So why does that matter? Now, we've heard this before, and I know this isn't maybe new for a lot of people, but when you understand that when we get into the deeper layers of this, it's either understanding, is this person someone that's running away from fear or going to pleasure? How do you find that out? Well, when you're meeting people, you ask this question. You say, why are you looking for this investment? Right? The why question helps out a lot. And so when they say, or why are you looking to buy this house? Or why are you looking to, be one of our, what did you call it? Residents? Was that it? Yeah.
Residents. Yes.
Yeah. So when you ask that question, you got to actively listen, because part of influence is not just always talking, it's about listening, because you got to understand the person. So when they say, well, I'm looking to get out of this other place because it's been, not that good of a situation. I'm looking to, be able to have my kids be more safe. The school district was too far away, whatever it is. Or I'm looking to finally know that my money is going to be safe and it's going to be working for me. You could start to understand that they are trying to get away from their pain. Right. So as you continue to progress, once you ask this question, you will constantly speak in their language. Right. So when you speak to them and you sell them on this vision, on this property, on this investment, you speak in the sense of, hey, this is to help you get away from those pains. And there, we'll talk about how to identify those. But if you're the type of person where you don't know how to understand that, and you're like a forward thinker, which like Chad, I believe you and I are the same, where we're very progressive thinkers. We always think about the opportunity and such. If you're only getting sold the opportunity and all the exciting things to look forward to and all the pleasures, but you're not really speaking my language of the pain, if I'm trying to get away from the pain, I wouldn't resonate with you as much, and maybe I won't be sold. And if you've had a plateau in your business right now, or in your sales, or in your investments, or your fundraising, It's maybe because just that alone, you're not speaking to that person's language. Because you could be the most eloquent speaker in English, but if you're trying to speak to someone that only speaks Spanish, they're not going to understand basically anything that you're saying. And that's what this is about with influence.
It's so funny you go there. And honestly, you mentioned a name, so I'm going to go there. Chris Voss has a very similar tactic here that probably is a version of this, but it is the age old adage is treat people the way you want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
No, that is false. You need to treat people the way they want to be treated, right? And by treating people that way, you're going to find that everyone speaks different languages. You go to the Five Love Languages book. I forget who wrote that book, but the Five Love
Yeah,
Languages. It
yeah,
talks
yeah.
about the different way that spouses, the different love languages they have to speak, right? You talk about the four different personality types. Some people want to be spoken to in a very short, concise, time is money type
Mhm.
of way, and some really want to be a little more touchy feely about it. So I think that's kind of what you're getting at, is treat people the way they want to be treated, not the way you want to be treated.
And most of these people, they don't know that they want to be treated this way. And that's the thing about influence is majority of people just run in subconscious programming, right? All these things, and there's so many layers to this, and I don't think we even have time, but to go through all of it. But you have to identify this if you want to be an influential leader, an influential business person. You have to be able to identify this. So that's why the first tactical thing is quickly asking, like, the why question. Why do you want this property? Why do you want this? And then you're going to identify, are they running away from something, or are they trying to get something? If they start saying, I'm looking forward to, the opportunity, there's going to be more people in that area. It's a higher net worth area. School's closer. So I'm excited to have my kids meet all these new kids. Then, they're a pleasure type of person. So moving forward, as you continue to talk, you're going to emphasize the moving forward pleasure part. Doesn't mean you avoid the pain, right? This is another limiting belief I want to break for a lot of people here, and then we'll go into this little acronym that I want to share. You have to. It is a disservice if you do not disturb or move around their pain a little bit, right? An undisturbed buyer, an undisturbed prospect, an undisturbed investor, undisturbed any human will not move forward to the ultimate path they will want to go on if they are undisturbed. So if you're going to come in and influence them, it doesn't mean you manipulate them and you learn what their pains are and now you're using it against them. It means that when you understand what their pains are and what their wants and their needs, and you disturb it a little and figure out what's it going to look like if they don't move forward in that path, and what's the pain going to be, and that their ultimate goal is to get this new job, this new business, this new house, and you lead them to that path. That's the only way you could do that. So I just wanted to be really, really clear on that here, Chad, is that a lot of people are afraid of getting down into the pains and the problems they're going through. But let's be real. Once again, America wouldn't be here today if we didn't have enough pain and enough disturbance in ourselves when we were living across the pond. That's what got us into this new freedom.
That's a very interesting way to think about it, and you're absolutely right. I mean, that is absolutely right. Really, in any sale, whether it is forming a new organization that will at one day become a country, or simply buying something at the grocery store, if you don't have some sort of a need, a want, a desire that is tickled by walking by the chocolate milk and deciding, I want chocolate milk, if you don't have that disservice of not having the chocolate milk, then you're never going to make the decision to buy or use a service or whatever it is that you're trying to influence that person to do, even if it was get
Right.
a girl to go
And
on a date with you, right?
exactly. And to be honest, and well, some people would say, well, I already know like what they need and I'm going to provide them what they need. Well, that's not the truth as well, because if America ran, or the world ran on what humans only needed, we would be in a deep, dark depression, because we don't need much things and not many people will buy stuff. The humans have a lot of desire, and there's a lot of external and internal factors that cause that, right? External, such as marketing, ads, all these things that make a need to desire. The ultimate goal as someone that's going to be more influential, especially in your business, whether it's to the customer or to your own team, is how to start making that person see the needs turn into desires, right? When they know they need something, they're still not going to buy it because a need doesn't make you really want to buy it. People know they need to go to the gym, but why are we still, I think it's like 42% obese in America? It's because it's not a desire yet until they hit a big enough disturbance or threshold in their life, such as like a life-threatening heart attack, which unfortunately that man was back in that stretcher twice, which I thought I would have done it the first time. But sometimes it takes multiple times to get really, really disturbed with pain until you see that need turn into a desire. So that was just more the mindset here, Chad. I just wanted to share that because when you understand that, you will take away that limitation and be like, you know what? It's okay for me to probe a little bit and ask these questions because that's what's going to really help them get to the promised land.
Absolutely. Well, with that, let's move to tactical bit number 2, because I think we have hit that one very hard, and that's incredibly important. I mean, understanding how to turn first of all, tickle the emptiness, and then turn that into a need, and then turn that into a want. So where do we go from
Yeah.
here?
So, one of the most important things that people fail at, especially in any type of business, is qualifying and probing for the problems or the pains of this person. Okay. This is what's going to transition them from someone that's just like a window shopper of whatever business you have to getting ready to hand over their paperwork, their investment, whatever that looks like. So, how do we do this? It comes down to this acronym that's called NWAM. And I learned this from Tony Robbins. And so it's NWWAM. Okay. So the N stands for needs. The very first thing you got to understand this acronym is to figure out who are they? Are they qualified to do this? So, what are their needs? So, if I could suggest you right now, you should write down 1 or 2 questions in your specific industry or business that you can ask to really get crystal clear on their needs. What are you looking for? Obvious, right? If we got you this house, like what's the amenities that you're wanting, right? You're starting to understand their needs, their things that are necessities. The second one is their wants. So this is more of like we talk about the needs and wants are very different in the sense that wants are like more of the desires and such. So same thing, asking questions, very calibrated questions to understand what they want. Because people don't always just buy what they need, they buy what they want. That they want a house, but what they really want is to be closer to the school district for their kids. What they really want is they want to be in a higher net worth community so they can feel more prestigious. What they really want is that they want to, impress their spouse by getting this first big purchase. You better believe that's going to be more emotional reasoning in later down when you're closing, when you really speak to that and you ask the questions, especially let's say it was for their spouse. Like, hey, I really want to take care of my spouse. This has been my goal for 20 years to get this 4-bedroom house for my wife. And now you're like, oh, so you're going to take a note of that because that's a deep down want. Later down, you're going to speak to that. You're not manipulating them. You're basically speaking to what they say to say, hey, so when you get this house, like, where do you see your wife like staying the most, or where would you put her office, or what do you hear her saying once we get this contract signed? How do you think that's going to be for properly influencing him to the ultimate goal? So that's the second W, or the first W is wants. Okay. The third part of the NWAM is wounds. What are the pains, the wounds, the areas that you got to start asking questions around? Because you have to identify this. You got to identify the needs, you got to identify the wants, you got to identify the wounds. Why are they wanting this new house? What's going to happen if they don't get this new house? What's going to happen if they don't put this money in this investment or don't find some type of investment? What's the problems? So once again, write down 1 or 2 questions that you could think right now that will basically be subconscious pretty soon of asking, maybe like, what's going to happen if we don't, get you $5,000 a month in cash flow through investments? Like, what's that going to cause problem? Well, I'm going to have to still work my 9 to 5, or I'm going to have to still, keep searching around, or my wife is going to start saying that, maybe this thing is not really what it's meant to be. And she's going to give me more grief. That's a wound. And you better believe, Chad, I'm sure you could agree, wounds are going to be really what move people. The only reason I'm doing what I'm doing today is because I felt my own personal pain of feeling like as much as I can help people in the ER, being a nurse, and as much as I was giving my heart and soul to literally save lives, I felt like I wasn't enough because it wasn't helping. because I was on the wrong vehicle, and that caused a lot of wounds within me, and that made me change. So the fourth area of this is authority. So you got needs, wants, wounds, and authority. This one's a really quick one, but who's the one that's making charge? Who's the one making decisions? Now, you're not able to just go and ask who's the decision maker, right? But you could get
Unless you're a telemarketer, right?
unless you're a telemarketer, and that's why
Are you the
telemarketers
decision
sometimes
maker in this household?
then they got a bad rap for that. So being influential is asking better questions. Let's say um, you are looking for investments, right? You can ask a question of being like, what was the last big investment you and your spouse made? If you know that they have a spouse, and they'll say, well, we actually recently purchased a house. Oh, amazing! How did that work? Like, who was the one that really took charge on that, or like, were you handling that all, or was this a team effort? You're going to gain a lot of intel and realize if they say, no, I took charge of it, the house just, or, my wife just made the decisions on where we're going to stay at. I handled all the paperwork, finances, all that. Cool. Or it could be, you know what? No, actually, we look over everything together. That's one of our things that we do is we like looking at. Now you're going to get a lot of information. So you're not going to try and close them or do this whole process without having the wife involved. Does that make sense so far?
It absolutely does. Yes, I think authority is key because if you could find out the needs, wants, wounds of the wrong person who has no authority to make the decision.
Exactly. And you don't even know this person could have came on this maybe webinar that you have, or this sales meeting, or this, they could have came in and got on a consultation call, and they could have promised their wife or their spouse or their husband, whoever it is, and said, I'm not buying a single thing. Don't worry, I'm just getting info. And now you spent an hour trying to close this person when they're not even trying to close. Wouldn't you want to learn that in the upfront by asking this question? So that's why
Absolutely.
once again, tactical wise, is write down one or two questions that could help you identify these, right? And the authority one is like asking about, like, if it's around investments. When was the last investment you guys did? Whose idea was that? Like, just get more intel on that. And then the last area to wrap this whole NWAM up, which this alone, it would be game changer on so much progress in business, is the money, right? We think we need to know the money up front. Like, people think that getting intel is about figuring out how many rooms they want, what's the square footage, like what's the product benefits that they're looking for. That's not really getting intel. Intel is about understanding who this human is to the deepest core. That's what influence is. The money is a big part, but it's not the only part. So the money part is asking, and it depends on your industry, but just getting an idea of like how much of a significant investment are you guys to look? What's your range that you're doing? What was the biggest investment you made in the past? I'm just curious. Like, is this something that you see where you start off small with your investment, or are you looking to go really big? Are you more of a budget friendly person? Or if we were able to create a package deal for you for our services and it was everything you wanted to get to that result, would price not be an issue? Those are the type of questions that could help you understand where their money thermostat is.
Wow. I mean, that alone right there is, makes this whole episode worth it. I think that is a game changing acronym for many people here. And, previously, just listening to what you're talking about here, I would have capped that conversation at identify what the customer wants. And I think, the biggest need we have today is significance. We just want to feel significant. We want to feel cared about, right? How many people have tried to sell you in the past? How many people have handed you a shiny brochure or, just given you data, metrics, and pictures of what it is they're trying to force down your throat? Didn't even ask you if you want it,
Yeah.
but what you've done here is take that into, needs, wants, wounds, which is kind of the driver for the want or the need,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then the authority and the money. Can you actually close the sale or the deal or the method of influence you're trying to close? This goes into influence, more than just closing deals and sales and things of that sort. You can apply this in your everyday life if you're trying to get something done,
Yeah.
right?
Well, when you apply this too, closing should not be hard. Closing is hard. Like, when you have to get them to sign the contract or make the big investment or whatever it is, that's only hard when you don't do this entire process of hand in front of it, right? You're not asking these qualifying questions. You're not understanding what's their drivers. The problem with sales and people that get a misinterpretation on it is when they think they have to be a hard closer. They got to say the right words, the tactics, the strategies to basically manipulate them to say yes or say no. That's not a good thing, because even if you do manipulate them to say it, you better believe you're going to get a phone call the next day when they say, hey, I'm going to pull out of this deal, right? The closing becomes easy, and influence. This is once again outside of business as well. This is for your kids as well. Do you understand your kids' needs and wants? Right, their wants is definitely way different than yours. But have you been very clear on that? Do you realize that you telling them to do that chore every single day sounds like a complete just terrible idea, but it's a want for you? But did you ever try to influence them in saying, hey, actually doing this chore or doing this thing will lead into bigger wants that you get as an outcome, right? Just that little shift. And so what happens from here, Chad, just to kind of wrap this all up, this is just one area of the entire, I do like an optimizing influence and sales workshop. I actually was just up last week from the point of us recording this. And I was working with a real estate team in Northern California, and they're doing, I think, almost 300 mil or 230 mil. They're going to be helping 600 families this year, and they're all rock stars, right? They know how to close and help families. And a lot of people in here, and if you're listening to this right now, I'm sure you are too. But when you hear these things and now it like finally becomes conscious in the sense of like, oh, I have been asking questions like that. Oh, you're right. Like, a lot of these things I am doing. That's good. But now you could be more intentional on it, because now that you know their needs, wants, wounds, authority, and money, now when you start getting into the final processes of wrapping up the deal, really what matters, and I'll just briefly touch up on this, is weighing the urbans and lurbans. Also, something else I learned from Tony. Urban means emotional reasons to buy now, ERBN. And lurban is logical reasons to buy now. You got to stack those up so high that their drabs, which is dominant reasons against buying, which is their objections. I don't have the time. I have, not have the money. My spouse is waiting till next year. All these different dominant reasons. If you could stack up all these emotional, logical reasons, they're going to want to get in. When you're looking to get funding for your investments and people are saying, well, I'm going to wait for the recession, and that's their dominant reason against buying, but you really stack it up on why they need to get in now because you understand what emotionally drives them, and you also give logical backing to that, that's when you're going to set them over the edge and you're going to be very influential.
Wow. I mean, dude, we could keep going on this all day, but sadly, I have to limit the episodes. Man, it's killing me. We could keep going on this for so long. So, folks, this is probably one of the most genuine individuals that I've come across in the coaching space. And, all of this stuff is culminating from some of the leading minds of today. And Jake has pulled it all together into what he calls the strategic edge. I mean, you're hearing some nuggets from Tony Robbins. You've heard us allude to Chris Voss, and many, many more like it, even the Wolf of Wall Street himself. So, Jake, how can the listeners get in touch with you? Because I know they're going to want to reach out and maybe get some more of these tactical nuggets, if nothing else, but possibly, how can they get in touch with you and how can they apply to work with you?
Absolutely. And, all I can say is if you're already crushing it right now, that's cool if that's where you're complacent at and you're fine with being at. But if you know you have a bigger purpose or a goal, like if you're making $100,000 a year or $100,000 a month or $100,000 a day, is that your ultimate goal? Is that what you're called on this earth to do? Because I can guess if you're doing pretty good already, you have the capacity to do more. And that's where maybe there's a bottleneck there. Maybe there's something that's just one little area that we could optimize and it scales that. So if that's you, I'd love to be able to talk further. You could come to jakehavron.com and maybe Chad, I don't know if this would be something that's cool with you, but if you have any listeners that, want like a free like consultation or I do like this like impact analysis, which is where people fill in their info about their business. And then I basically look at it, do a lot of upfront work and basically create a game plan where they could see how much, can be created in their business. Would that be cool if I offer like a few of those on here? I don't know if you do that.
Yeah, I mean, I might take a commission. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, you can absolutely offer something like that. And guys, I can't believe I forgot to mention that this is a huge piece of free value add that Jake does here, and I think you should take advantage of it. So what do you think, Jake? How should
Yeah,
we
just
manifest that?
let's just do that where if you reach out to me when you listen to this episode and you tell me that you came through, Chad in the Real Estate Runway, and reach out to me on Instagram at Jake Havron. That's my main social media. I'm also on LinkedIn and Facebook if that only works for you. And just tell me what you liked most and just say, hey, I'm interested in that free consultation. Now, I'll be completely transparent. I'm not going to sell you on anything. I'm only going to give massive value just because that's what I love to do. And if there's a way that I could help you and run an impact analysis on your business to scale it up or to free your time, then I'd be more than happy to do that. So just message me at Jake Havron.
I love it, folks. And no worries if you can't remember what he just said. This will be in the show notes. Just scroll down in whatever modality you're listening to, and it will be right there. So without further ado, let's get to the Quattro Trio. A couple of questions we ask every guest on the show. Jake, what is your superpower in life or in business?
Well, I feel like we kind of talked about that today.
A lot of it, yes.
Chad, I'm only here right now. I've only, been to Ed Milet's event and part of his house. I've only met the woman of my life who is a powerhouse and speaks on stages all over the world. I've only done this within the 5 years into counting because of the ability to influence, the ability to, and I'd say that's my superpower, the ability to understand humans, which maybe that was the grace of God of going to be a nurse, was to understand how to help humans and understand them to their deepest cores, especially when they're on their deathbed, and being able to now take that into business and make it only win-win-win situations. So if that's one superpower, I'd say is the ability to influence and help people for what they want.
And I say it's an incredible superpower. Jake, what is your biggest failure to date, and what did you learn from it?
Oh man. But I guess, but the biggest failure, it's a great question you asked that. I would say is that I was supposed to play professional basketball. And this is kind of almost like a paradoxical failure because I was supposed to play pro basketball, signed a contract for the Hawaii pro team right after I got out of college. And 2 weeks before the program was about to start, the whole program collapsed because the coach dipped out, went rogue, and the whole island of Hilo was like, what the heck? And that was a big failure at the time. That's the caveat. But when that one door closed, it opened me up to entrepreneurship, and I'm only here because that door closed. So that's the first thing that came to mind.
Talk about lemonade out of lemons, folks. I love that. All right. And getting into the last question here, philanthropy. That is one of Quattro's 4 pillars. I love putting people on a pedestal here and allowing you to share what is your modality of giving, what cause do you support. A lot of times our listeners will go and support on your behalf. So what would that modality be?
I'm a big believer and advocate for the people that are fighting for those that are suffering from child sex trafficking, like Operation Underground Railroad. We have some personal friends that you could probably put their info in the text that actually spoke at that event that we met at, that are helping these poor innocent kids that are just going through this atrocity. And as I continue to scale my business and grow and generate more wealth, you better believe that's going to continue to help these children that did not deserve any of this. So definitely that really weighs on my heart.
I love that. And we are donors of that as well. Unfortunately, some of those institutions that we spoke of here, we can't not say on the air because those individuals are actually targets in the sex trafficking industry. So reach out to either one of us, and we'll get you connected with the methodology to donate to those causes. But the ones we're talking about here are truly, underground, under the radar, and fighting this battle on the front lines. So anything to do with kids, I agree, man. You can't help the card. They can't help the cards they were dealt,
Yeah.
So now that we have reached the end of the episode, my friend, if I didn't have a broker call right after this on a property I'm selling, I would keep this thing going in perpetuity because we could talk. We may just have to have you back on the show to keep going on some of this stuff.
We might just have to do that.
We might just have to do it. So at Jake Havron, everywhere you can find your social media, it sounds like, and jakehavron.com. Jake, It has been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. And I hope that every single person that's listening here goes and be more influential and move this world so then they could bring the people with them.
Remember the NWAM, folks. All right. This has been another episode of the Real Estate Runway podcast. Until next time, over and out.
We hope this episode was insightful and brought value to your day. If so, please be awesome and leave us a 5-star review. Find out how Team Quattro can help you at thequattroway.com. Until next time, this is the Real Estate Runway Podcast.